Okay, boys. For a while now, we have been observing from a distance of this new game coming to us, holiday 2020, called Godfall. Now, to be honest with you, the trailers and stuff that's been shown has lacked details, most notably just raw gameplay. And as someone who has been duped in the past, I don't trust anything until I see the UI. Now, first up, what is Godfall? Who's making it? It's Gearbox, guys. Or at least they're publishing it. The game that's actually deving it, though, is Counterplay Games, which kind of makes us wonder how this game's going to play out, considering they have Counterplay in their company name, Incoming Parry System. In the most recent trailer right here, we get to see brief clips, and they were actually showcasing the 5 different weapon types you'll be able to use inside of Godfall. You've got your long sword, your dual blades, your polearm, your two-handed hammer or warhammer, and your two-handed great sword. Weapons look absolutely sexy, by the way, and that's the thing about this game. Everything looks gorgeous. From the armor to the weapons to the environments, it is a very colorful game. Now, being Borderlands-esque style, at least in Gearbox's delivery, it's a looter slasher, but it's also co-op, allowing you to have a team of 3 going into these environments. Now, I have no idea if Gearbox is planning on expanding on this. Maybe they might have like a 6-man environment, may include some raids down the road. Who knows? Also, it looks to be just a PvE game. I don't see any type of PvP. They haven't showcased that in any kind of way. I think the only thing they might include is like a duel mode, but no dedicated PvP. Now, I think the question that came up to many of us is, what is the difficulty of this game? Is this going to be a game that we're just going to be able to button mash our way from start to finish? Or is there actually some skill sets involved with learning mechanics, learning how to block and parry, etc.? From the gameplay trailer, I'm not gonna lie, guys, it doesn't look overly difficult. It looks like a button smasher. There are parry and block mechanics, even a shield strike and shield throw mechanic. And for the most part, none of the AI really looked that difficult. Everything kind of like stood there and took it. Again, though, this is trailer gameplay. I don't know the scale of which these enemies would ramp up, but there are certain features like exploiting weaknesses. You'll probably notice red points on your enemies. I'm sure you have to activate maybe your quick attack button, which would then do a lunge attack, possibly a finisher. Now, I know everyone wants to look at a game on its base value, but I like to actually like draw from a game and figure out where I have seen some of these things, some of the similarities. Originally, when I saw that exploit weakness, I was like, okay, that kind of looks like Sekiro, but this is really not Sekiro, obviously. The more and more I look at this game, though, the more I think this game reminds me of Mortal Shell. Now, granted, Mortal Shell, it's much slower pace. Obviously, Godfall is much faster, but from the design, especially from the weapon types, essentially the same weapon types that exist inside of Mortal Shell also exist here inside of Godfall. The biggest differences between both of these is, well, Godfall is a co-op experience. Mortal Shell is more of a single-player Dark Souls experience. Probably the most similar Godfall looks similar to is actually God of War. And God of War, outwardly looking in, looked like a button smasher. Didn't look like a lot of thought process was going into you playing the game. But I gotta tell you guys, the Valkyries on God of War are some of the most difficult content I've ever tackled. So it scales, it just has an easy gate, which is what I'm thinking is going on here with Godfall. I think this game is probably gonna have a much easier gate, obviously in comparison to some of your other melee-based games, Mortal Shell, Sekiro, Dark Souls, etc. Probably similar to that of God of War, but will scale significantly, or at least we hope it scales significantly in its end game. With that being said, though, if the similarities is being drawn between Godfall and God of War, we're missing one of the key strengths that God of War had, which kept us in the game way more than its gameplay, and that's the narrative. First up, something I want to mention about this, and this is something that the game director of Counterplay Games was very upfront about, which is the dev studio behind this game. There's no microtransactions. Now, I bring that up because I think a previous game they made called Duelist had microtransactions. Funny enough, the publisher for that game was Bandai, who also publishes our Dark Souls games. Duelist, though, is more of a turn-based strategy game. I have not played it, but that's what it looks like. It also looks like some of the inspiration from Duelist made its way into Godfall, perhaps. Narratively, though, it's pretty much your run-of-the-mill. You play as a knight, you're gonna kill gods. Hence the name Godfall. That's about as simple as it gets. Now, obviously, the goal is just to slash and kill everything, get sweet loot, and equip it. And as you can see right here, these are actually legendary armor sets that you can acquire. Again, kind of giving me major Mortal Shell vibes, right? Like in Mortal Shell, you have to find shells and equip them and spec them out. This is, you know, you find legendary armor sets, and instead of being in a crypt, you're in this beautiful temple, which is probably your main hub. Outside of that, guys, it doesn't look to be that narratively driven. I'm sure it's going to have some small story, but it appears that all the time and effort is being heavily invested, probably in the loot aspects and the gameplay aspects, as well as the co-op experience. Which takes us to our thoughts on Godfall as of now. Beautiful game, fellas. Really, really, it's a gorgeous looking game. Outwardly looking in, you see the bright, shiny lights, you're like, oh my lord, that is a next-gen experience. But I am somewhat wary. I just don't know what the longevity of this game is. Am I gonna burn through it within 10, 15 hours? That's kind of the assumption I'm having on this game. It's not a live service game. It makes me feel like this is a game that's like, hey, you can run through it, play single player, or you can invite your friends and smash the hell out of everything. It'll probably have some higher tier or even pinnacle level bosses to take down, maybe even some hidden gems. But I really think that's about it with Godfall. I don't think this game is gonna have nearly as much depth as it looks. You gotta understand the market that I think this game is going after are games like Monster Hunter, and then your more hardcore gamers like your Soul gamers, Mortal Shell, all those real punishing, very, very difficult games. But this is going to attract them to at least give it a try, I would assume. But to a Souls gamer, what keeps us is the feeling of accomplishment. I mean, there's like a badge that you get to wear when you beat a Souls game, because you know how much hell it took to take down the Nameless King. And this applies to multiple difficult games. I mean, there's a reason why I still haven't beaten Sekiro, because your man's not good enough to beat it. It's that difficult. But believe me, when I finally beat that game in 2024 or 2025, whenever that takes place, I will wear that badge with honor and will flaunt it like hell, because those are not easy games to conquer. Godfall is going to attract a player base with that same conquering mentality. My fear for it is that its difficulty will not match the player base's appetite. And then from the looter side of things, you're going to have a player base from Monster Hunter that is expecting hundreds and hundreds of hours of gameplay. And Counterplay Games have already come out and said that, hey, this is not really an MMO. Don't think of this as an MMO. It's just co-op with friends, which is essentially, to me, more Borderlands. Borderlands had a narrative though, which again, like I said a second ago, that's really what's riding on this game, I think. If it's really gonna be one that's memorable. Are we gonna get to the end of it and go, okay, the hell was that? I literally just mashed R1 from start to finish. I killed a bunch of dudes that said they were gods. Do I feel accomplished? Who knows? Who knows? But with it being a single player and a co-op experience, my assumption, unless the game dynamically scales the difficulty, depending on how big your team is, I honestly think it's gonna be easy, especially with a co-op team. You got a team of 3 in here, and if the difficulty doesn't scale with it, oh boy. So yeah, Godfall very much looks like a beautiful game. If it plays as well as it looks, I think it's gonna be a pretty good game. However, the player bases that they're really trying to draw from have an enormous appetite. Let me know in the comments below what you think, guys. Are you excited about this game? Are you like, hey man, I don't care. It's got ray tracing, baby, and I get to look pretty in armor. Okay, I get it. Maybe that's all people want. I'm in the minority, but I like difficulty. I like to be able to beat a game and say, hey, yeah, I did that. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.